आवाज येत नाही आपला आवाज
अरे ते
माइक
आलं लक्षात
तो तू माइक म्यूट पे रखना
स्टिल जो वो बोलेंगे ना और आपका अगर आवाज माइक
I get it डबल होस्ट आपण काय नव्हतं वेदांगीला को होस्ट करा ना सर वेदांगी को होस्ट हुई देख चेक कर
Nice
Good
to see
evening,
you.
Dr. Russell. Hi, Dr. Mary, Dr. Derek. I think Dr. Praveen Arora is also signed in. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you, for really joining in. Yeah. It's wonderful, I think.
Thank you for the invite. It's good to be here.
Oh, no, really. Because today's entire proceedings have completely been handled by our students. So it's what do they call it? Trial by fire for them. So all of you been there.
No, they are outstanding always. Hi,
They
Subram, good to
are
see
more
you.
experienced than all of us.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. At least with technology, yes, you're right. They keep correcting us and guiding us how to transfer from one technology piece to the other.
I guess we should start with the session. I can see attendees joining the session and they'll join in soon. So a very good evening, afternoon, morning, because we have also got international attendees joining for the session. So welcome everyone. I would like to welcome our guest speakers, then medical, paramedical and allied health sciences students and faculties. Also, we have faculties from Psychiatry Association and colleges teaching psychology, because they have also agreed to be part of our seminar. And then we also have international students who are logging in for today's seminar. So I would also like to thank them. And then secondly, we have got Bioethics Wing Steering Committee and Student Advisory Committee on the call. So indeed, it's a great privilege to have them again on the call with us. We also have Indian steering committee members like Mary Matthew ma'am, Derek sir, Praveen Arora sir. Shortly, Princey ma'am will be also joining the call. So we are also, happy that we have them along with us. And we also have different bioethics unit from India and across the globe who will be participating in this seminar today. So before beginning with the seminar, I would like to thank Dr. Russell sir, Dr. Shimpa ma'am for accepting the invitation and carrying out this event very smoothly. I would also like to thank all the attendees, especially because they have logged in on time to make this event very smoothly and for their active participation. Now I would request the lead chair of our University Kolhapur India Bioethics Unit, Dr. Rakesh Kumar Mudgal sir, to please address the seminar. So can we have you? Okay, moving ahead, I would now request our co-lead chair, Dr. Rakesh Sharma sir, Dean, D.Y. Patil Medical College, Kolhapur, to please address the audience.
Good evening, everybody. I think it's a real pleasure to see Dr. Russell D'Souza after such a long time.
It's lovely to see all of you too.
Yeah, my sincere regards to you. And heartiest welcome to Dr. Mary Matthews.
Thank you.
Dr. D'Souza, really pleasure to see you after such a long time. I haven't met you in last 2 years ever since,
I know, a long time.
He was inaugurated here at Kolhapur. And after the post-COVID time, all of us have been really taken up by the efforts that we have all put in for, dealing with the pandemic. And at the same time, I will say my hello to the student wings. They have done a great job in organizing today's this seminar. And I'm sure with the august presence of the eminent speakers like all three of you I mentioned and others also, I'm sure we are going to learn a lot about this so-called embitterment syndrome. You see, frankly speaking, I just didn't know what does it mean. But when we meet people who have undergone either the infection themselves or anybody in their family, I think when we talk to them, then sometimes you start realizing that maybe they really suffer so badly, not only economically, but even health-wise, mentally, and socially. This pandemic was not only a problem of health, it was a big issue relating to the mental and the social stigma which was attached, unfortunately, to this. Like we have seen people being, sort of the label being put on the building that so and so is having COVID positive, or the parents were asked to move out of the societies. The doctors were not allowed to enter the societies where they lived, and they were serving the society. So I feel, all this has led to so many issues amongst healthcare providers and even others. The topic is very relevant, and I really congratulate our student wing, and especially our dear student, Mr. Gupta. He has been a force behind this. Under the guidance of our other teachers, they are doing a great job. Having said that, I once again welcome all of you, sir. And Dr. D'Souza, we are looking forward to meet you again in Kolhapur, Dr. Mary
Yes.
Matthews. So having said that, I hand over the proceedings to our student wing chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, sir, for the words of wisdom, sir. Your motivation and your guidance always helps us to achieve, great in life. Without much delay, we'll be starting with the session. So we have got some ground rules for the session, and I would request our attendees to please abide by those ground rules. That is, I would request everyone to please keep their mic on switch off mode. Secondly, we'll be also sending you a post-event questionnaire form, which is very much necessary to get your certificate. Thirdly, I also want the session to be very interactive. So if you have any questions, you can put down in the chat box. We have eminent panelists today, so all questions will be taken care of. Then again, a reminder: certificate will be only issued to those who fill pre and post event form, because it is very much necessary for us to know how much you learn out of today's session, because thinking in a way that this session is something, this topic is something very much new, and I want everyone to learn out of today's session. So you can put on your chat box you can put your questions in the chat box. Having said that, I would now like to hand it over to Vedangi Patil. She will continue with the further proceedings.
A very good evening to everyone present here. Request Dr. Anita Gune, ma'am, Associate Professor, Department of Anatomy and Secretary, India Bioethics Unit, UNESCO Haifa, to the annual unit report. Dr. Gune, ma'am.
Good evening. Invited speaker, colleague, Bioethics Unit, Steering Committee, Student Advisory Committee, Student Bioethics Wing of our university, faculty, students of all other colleges and our university, a very good evening. I am Anita Gune, Secretary of the Bioethics Kolhapur Unit, to present the report of the unit. Society University established
Dr.
India
Gune,
Bioethics Unit.
Dr. Gune,
network of UNESCO chair on 13th of March 2017.
Dr. Gune, can you log out from your other ID?
The aim and mission to sensitize and educate health professionals about the importance of bioethics in day-to-day life. Seven faculties of our unit completed international certification course in principles of bioethics and human rights under the Department of Education, UNESCO and Bioethics. Currently, 8 MBBS students have enrolled for the same certificate course. UNESCO Chair in Bioethics organizes international competitions for the World Bioethics Day celebration. In 2017, the theme of the celebration was equity, justice, and equality. For this, our students had participated. I'm very glad to say they've been doing it every year, and not only participate, they've been awarded first prize all 3 consecutive years. In 2017, in 2018, the theme was solidarity and cooperation. In 2018, we celebrated the Bioethics Day. We had an essay competition, poster presentation. There was a mime on environmental ethics, which was by the nursing students. And this, our faculty had written a handbook with some principles of bioethics, which was released on that day, so that all the faculties and the students could have ethical attributes in the ethical attributes in the medical field. In 2019, there was a symposium to celebrate the World Bioethics Day. Again, we had a symposium by postgraduate students also. There was a skit by nursing students. There was a fashion show by the medical students, because the theme that was cultural diversity. One of the aims was to develop a module that can be covered in the academic course. Keeping this in mind, steering committee and the student advisory committee, all the faculty got together and got a record of 60 lectures so that it can be converted into a module and could be uploaded on the website so students can see the PPT and get the benefit of that. The recent outbreak of the coronavirus globally has risen many articles, videos, social media posts. All of them were talking about preventive measures, symptoms, origin, what to do and what not to do, the initial phases. As it was creating awareness, there were some different misconceptions about the same. So our student bioethics wing thought of making videos about the myths or misconceptions in the local language. This all came together, and it was downloaded on this website for the use of common people to understand their misconceptions about COVID in the society. Happy to note, COVID or lockdowns, our students were not sitting back. 44 students of a unit on an average attended 3 webinars of bioethics. They really that webinars gave them a better idea about the path to take during the controversial situations. Diva Patel Education Society, in association with the Department of Education International Program in Bioethics, organized the international seminar. So you all know the part of it. So that was related to the bioethics and COVID pandemic on 2nd October. Head of a unit, Dr. Shimpa Sharma, madam, and head of the bioethics wing, Mr. Shubham Gupta, were part of 3 days conference with the esteemed panel discussions and competition, inter-organizational medico-ethical conference cum competition, which was conducted on 16, 17, 18, 2020. To celebrate 2020 WBD, World Bioethics Day, we had invited speakers, Guru K. Praveen Arora sir, Vatsala Swami madam. We organized the artistic poster competition, poem competition. This year also for International World Bioethics Day, our students have contributed in different short film with this, but we are awaiting the results. In debate competition, which was organized at Ethic AIDS Conference by the Department of Education, UNESCO and Rotaract Club, team of our students of student wing were awarded best team debate team among all the bioethics unit from India. So we are very proud of our students during this pandemic. They didn't sit back. They have done lots of work towards bioethics. And today here again, we are session. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We are always glad to work continuously under your guidance. Now we have today with us Dr. Maddie Matthew, Professor of Pathology, Kasturba Medical College, Manipal, Head India Program, UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, Haifa, Council Member of Department of Education, UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, Honorary Professor in Bioethics in various medical in India. I please request Dr. Mary Matthew, ma'am, to say a few words.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Dr. Shimpa for inviting me to just say a few words on this wonderful international seminar that has been organized and put together by Shubham and his team. And it's really nice to see all the student wings doing so well in India compared to when you look at other countries. And D.Y. Patil Kolhapur has been very active, and they've taken, even though they joined much later, they have done very good work in the field of ethics, and all their initiatives always culminate into positive action, and that is what is good about and special about this unit. So what I'd like to say today is regarding the web series that has been organized for 2 days. And today's topic on post-traumatic stress disorder. This is not only with regard to the pandemic, but also in your daily life. I'm sure many of you have experienced trauma in your life or some sort of injustice in your life, and you think about it and you're not able to do anything much about it, and you become bitter as you keep on moving in life. And this is very common, and especially in the workplace, where there has been some sort of injustice meted out to you. And why is it important? Because it's going to affect our health. Because mental health, what is happening in our mind will come out as somatic symptoms in our body. So that is why it is important for us to know about post-traumatic stress disorder as health professionals. And not only that, even in power, where you sit in positions of power, it is important to recognize this, because a good leader is able to understand this problem and tackle it well, and tackle the faculty well to overcome this. So we have no other, I don't think there's any other person who can talk well about this other than Dr. Russell. And these are, topics which I say are really big topics which we've never heard in our student life. And you all are privileged and lucky to have such talks, because this changes your thinking and attitude when you work together as a team. So congratulations to D.Y. Patil Kolhapur for taking this initiative. I also like to thank the Dean, I think sir is not there, for recognizing us and being an example of taking this forward. So thank you very much, and good luck always to this unit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for putting light on the mental, social aspect of PTED as health professionals. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining today. Now, we have with us Dr. Colonel Derek D'Souza, international trainer and consultant organizational psychological medicine, Director, National Bioethics Curriculum Implementation Center, Pune, India, Head Training Courses and National Faculty Member, 3T Bioethics Training Indian Program of the UNESCO Chair Bioethics Haifa. I request Sir to please enlighten our attendees with today's topic.
Thank you, Vedanji, for that kind introduction and the invitation, because I think the best place to be is with the students, and any student-led program is always not just outstanding, but excellent in terms of content and the way you all manage things. I think sometimes we as faculty end up more interfering in what would otherwise be a smooth process. So I've learned to adopt a hands-off process. So congratulations to the entire team. Of course, your Dean, Dr. Rakesh Sharma, and the Pro Vice Chancellor, Dr. Shimpa Sharma. Many of you all don't know, but our association goes back to almost 30 years when I first wore my uniform and we met in Ambala. So it's a very long and deep association. Unfortunately, we couldn't travel to Kolhapur more often. And I'll never forget both their smiles, and it's nice to see them beaming again. So I'm glad we are connected on this virtual platform. Of course, listening to Dr. Russell, and I must tell all the students that y'all are really privileged this evening, because Dr. Russell is the Dean and founding director of this wonderful association of the International Organizational Psychological Medicine. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but it deals with how to work with and how to encourage what is the most important thing called human capital. That is, you as students, as faculty, as people whom you work with, we never put a value on this term of human capital. The things that we take for granted, the people that we take for granted, are actually the most important resource. So Dr. Russell has put in a lifetime of work into this area, and he is internationally recognized. So we're very grateful to have you, sir, and always a pleasure to listen to you on this very important topic. And I'm sure we'll go back with renewed knowledge and a better understanding of how to face problems as we come across them in the future. So thank you once again for this honor, and it's a pleasure to be here. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you so much, Derek D'Souza, sir, and we are very glad to have Dr. Russell, sir, with us today. I now request we have our today's invited speaker, Dr. Russell D'Souza, sir, Head and Chair, Department of Education, International Program of the UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, Haifa, Melbourne, Australia. Professor Dr. Russell D'Souza, sir, is currently the Executive Director, Global Operation Totem International Institute of Organizational Psychological Medicine. He is a member of American Association of Psychiatric Administration. He was elected the founding president of the Indian Global Psychiatric Initiative. Sir, I request you to please start with your today's session.
Thank you very much. 1 second, I'm just trying to. So I'm trying to get my good. All right. Now, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. The screen is starting yet.
Okay, good.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Vedangi Patel. Thank you very much. And thank you, Shimpa and Dr. Sharma. It was really nice to see you. We have always lovely memories of coming up, yeah, first coming up there, um, rapidly coming for the inauguration, then coming back again. And unfortunately, we haven't, COVID has stopped me from coming there, but certainly looking forward to coming back um, to meet, to be with all of you. I'm delighted that we are here today, and we have Shubham, and your student program is a dynamic program. They're leading, in fact, helping us organize many our student program around the world. So congratulations. I don't know if you know, Shimpa, that we have this Medical Students Association, the UNESCO chaired Medical Students Association International, and it includes United States, the AMSA, American Students Medical Association, the European Medical Students Association, the African Federation of Medical Students, and the Asian Federation. They've come together, and we have a program at the moment. In fact, Shubham is helping, is a part of the training, a course where we have 25 from USA, Canada, all of them combined with your students, so we brought them all together, and every Saturday we have they take part in a course that tries to bring in from timings from California on one side, Europe, Africa, and so we've been doing this now and hope to continue. So congratulations on all this. Now, I'm going to talk to you about an important, I think, Dr. Sharma, you were asking, you said you never heard of this, but all of you, I'm going to ask you to reflect in your life, in your workplace, and so forth. Have you met people who are bitter about something or the other? Either they may be genuinely bitter about either their boss or someone at the side or back or below them, or whatever. So this is an area that, particularly for the workplace, the psychological health of the workplace, that is related to productivity. So this is an area that's been studied, researched, and so I'm going to talk to you about embitterment, the concept, the effect of being bitter, and the condition getting worse when it reaches what's called post-traumatic embitterment, and how this impacts on your function, your productivity. Okay, so let's look at this again. The last decade has been important, where this has been studied, and it is actually a specific form of what we call an adjustment disorder. And why is this important? It has been associated pretty much with retrenchment, dismissal, demotion, being devalued at the workplace. And what they found, it has a chronic cause. And worse than all that is that it's pretty resistant to treatment. But most importantly, I'll show you what happens from the neuroscience, where your productivity studies show that you lose 70% of much of your cognitive, your ability to problem solve and to function. And this is work done by Berlin, University of Berlin, Michael Linden, and so forth, who were the initial people. As I said, it was the German research team led by Professor Linden, was one of the early, at the University of Berlin, one of the early people who worked on this, researched this. And it came after the Berlin Wall fell. And what we saw when the Berlin Wall fell was East and West came together. Of course, East Germany was the communist or the poorer cousin, and they came together. And so they found loss of prestige in society, economic issues, qualifications are not recognized. And so there was a serious prolonged states of psychological distress. And of course, they found the onset was linked to one specific event that the individual perceived as frustrating, humiliating, and indeed derogatory. And this ended up in a persistent, exhausting sense of being bitter because they felt everything was unfair. But there was always a trigger event here. Now, if you want, so to understand this whole area of embitterment, one needs to go back and understand the psychology of justice. And we all have dealt with it, and so I will try to explain to understand why injustice can have such dire circumstances. We have to understand what Dalbert, is called the belief in a just world. From childhood, we are given firm beliefs of positive behavior is rewarded and negative behavior is punished, right? And so this becomes over time a, a prerequisite, a belief, a prerequisite for social behavior. Learned providing security and influence. Indeed, it influences what others, you believe that this is what is needed. And when you do this, you are influencing others. And when there is a willful infliction of injustice, this means the offender wants to be aggressive and believes that the victim cannot defend himself. Modern societies, physical aggression is forbidden. And what we see is injustice is a frequent substitute. So the first reaction to is counter-aggression. Again, a lot of work has been done by several people in this area. And this type of aggression, which has negative consequences. Injustice questions values in life, and one believes the basic values are indeed violated. And so this goes on to understand it more to personal theories of reality or internal word models. And this is seen by some of the researchers and workers in this area. Now, when you look at the psychology of injustice and embitterment, you see beliefs are learned and different people will react to the same event differently. But they allow a coherent behavior across the lifespan of an individual. And indeed, this is often passed on from one generation to the other. And therefore, it defines what is correct or incorrect, what is just or unjust. And by and large, this is coming down to generations, what is right and wrong. By and large, this is resistant to environmental changes. So this is a sort of psychology of injustice, how this goes through. When life events at your workplace challenge the basic beliefs, they touch on the security and the assumption that the world is predictable and controllable, then this becomes a big issue. And if basic beliefs are put into question by events and persons in your workplace, unconsciously or psychodynamically, the person goes to war, and beliefs are endangered, and there is belief that you need to defend your basic beliefs. And dynamically, when I keep saying this, because from a dynamic perspective, these people who are defending their basic belief system, their predictable world, become dynamically martyrs. So justice is a critical issue. Perceived injustice is a persistent, exhausting feeling of having been wronged, leads to a feeling of humiliation, then goes on to helplessness, And in this situation, we see a desire for revenge. And unlike anger, embitterment is accompanied by a strong experience of guilt and feelings of having suffered a grave injustice. Now, if you look and reflect, I'm sure many of you would have found someone at some stage um, being bitter, feeling that the organization they work for or the country or whatever there's been injustice. So we see justice is a crucial issue. No, what did I say? I've already, yeah. So there is, when we talk of humiliation and so forth, there's an emotional reaction to someone who's been severely disappointed by others, who believes that their basic values are violated. So we see that embitterment is accompanied by other emotions, particularly feelings of hopelessness, helpfulness, poor mood, and lack of drive and aggression towards oneself. And this can end in both suicide or even homicide. Again, embitterment is a complex emotion accompanied, among others, by mistrust, despair, anger, aggression, grief, pessimism, weariness, hopelessness, dissatisfaction, disappointment, obsessiveness, and even fanatism. So we see a spectrum of very diverse and even contradictory emotions coming into play when when someone is embittered or bitter. And of course, by very nature, a reactive emotion after it comes after being let down, humiliated, and there is always a drive to fight back. And it's been described as a reaction to injustice, to protracted, and we've seen this linked to protracted unemployment, to traumatic experiences, and so forth. And there's some differences that the studies have shown. When you feel the world has treated you and these people unfairly, it becomes one step more complex than anger, because they're not only angry, they also feel helpless. And these people usually don't come to treatment because the world needs to change, not me. And what the studies show, that at any given time, a prevalence of 2% of your workforce or your workplace are affected at any given time. And of course, it's the driving emotion for what we also know now as post-traumatic embitterment disorder, in contrast to what we have anger, which is what we see in post-traumatic stress disorder. So here you see embitterment replacing the anger, and it is hypothesized to come from a threat to one's basic belief system, a belief in a just world. When we look at from a neuroscience point of view, what happens as a triggering event, an event that might trigger, and that brings on a perceived breach in support from the organization, from the management, or from the boss, or whatever leadership. And that causes a fair amount of rumination. But there's also a feeling of breach of injustice, or organizational justice is breached. And so there's a loss of trust in the organization, the management. But what we see is this rumination, continuously thinking about this, leads to hypervigilance, looking for more breaches, for more injustices, and of course, a redoubling of effort to gain justice, trying to seek justice. And what we see, there's a lot of rumination taking place. And of course, perception of organization as unjust. But very importantly, Michael Linden's work and others from Berlin and several other universities in Korea and so forth, which I'll show you, actually show that this rumination impairs your performance, your cognitive performance, your problem solving. Your all what we are able to achieve gets pushed down, and it also affects your commitment and your enthusiasm and your loyalty because you lost your trust. So this becomes a very important aspect in understanding your workforce or the organizational psychological medicine or the mental health of your workforce in your organization. That's the important part of this. Now, I already have told you it's a reactive emotion and it's self-reinforcing and so forth. But importantly, we look at this as 4 quadrants of emotion, mood, and distortion, right? So you have a hope on one side for change and one day experiencing joy, but there's also on that side anger, aggression, and almost wanting to have a revolution. And there's on one side separation, mistrust, disengage, embitterment, hate, and of course, ultimately, due to the helplessness, a resignation, feeling guilty, and depression, and so forth. Again, we see from what we've learned and understand what we see here that embitterment is the missing link between aggression on one side and depression on the other side. Okay, so beginning to understand this, where now emotional modulation is unimpaired like depression, so the person doesn't come out as a depressed person. So because the emotion modulation is not impaired, as we see in someone who's depressed, but they cling to the idea that something may happen or be done in order to make this critical event undone. And this is different from hopelessness. There's also self-blame and feelings of injustice. Again, comes different from anger. There's more of guilt here. And of course, when it becomes post-traumatic embitterment, you begin to have intrusive memories which are driven by the urge to fight, cope, and positively reinforce. So you have intrusive memories, which again, in post-traumatic stress, we also have intrusive, but there it's driven by avoidance and negative reinforcement. But in the post-traumatic embitterment, there is a drive, intrusive memories come in and bring an urge to fight, cope, win, and this is makes a difference there. Again, to understand it better, defines a state of hope and despair in terms of having the potential. You always have belief, I have a that you're going to change the situation, and the locus of control in terms of attributing a situation to an internal or external responsibilities like blaming oneself or blaming others. This continues to be the rumination that takes place, and all this together impacts, as I said, why is it become important? It's become important because this is contributes very much to, I don't know if all of you heard of in the last 10, 15 years, a workforce, the concept of presenteeism. Have you all heard of presenteeism? We once upon a time was thinking about absenteeism, but today Australia, we lose, it is estimated something like 60 billion is lost on presenteeism. That is someone being present, sitting at work, but not able to achieve their optimum function. It's not that they're dodging, it's they genuinely want to work, but they have the optimum function is impaired like this. And so this is, and the important thing for you to be aware that in presenteeism is now 4 times more costly than absenteeism. And so this is the new area that many organizations or everyone in USA, it's estimated to be some over 100, 150 billion or something like that. So that's why this is taken an important role. Things, again, the phenomenology, the final step in a row of experiences of helplessness, when things do not go as expected, frustration sets in, and then comes, it's gone otherwise, now you're disappointed. You've perceived that somebody could have done something about it, but did not. It brings in additional anger. And if some other person is perceived to or seen as guilty, it additionally comes to aggression. And if one has to admit that oneself should have done something, there's a bit of shame. If one is disparaged by other, it adds to humiliation. If repeated tries to seek redress or do something, turn things even worse, despair sets in. And if one can do nothing more to react, it additionally comes to hopelessness and almost what's called the giving up syndrome. Okay. And if injustice and infidelity or feelings of having been let down are involved, it becomes embitterment. And if these involve violation of one's central basic beliefs, it becomes severe embitterment. And of course, if the state of embitterment is unbearable, it in addition comes to rampage. Now, what about the criteria? Here is some of the diagnostic criteria. They've all developed this. So there is what's called the ACO criteria. And for all the psychologists and others for mental health who might be listening, this is what has been developed and been accepted. So you have a core criteria, and then we have, which is the 8 criteria, then you have additional signs and symptoms. Again, you can see another 4 there, and it goes on. So which brings you to make a formal diagnosis, and you'll see that it's got duration for more than 3 months, and importantly, performance in your roles and your daily activities and your roles in your job or wherever are impaired. So these are the requirements for making a diagnosis of post-traumatic embitterment disorder. So again, you see the instruments and so forth, rating scales that have been given. So this is indeed where we make the diagnosis and so forth. Okay, here again, if you look at this the Korean, they have done, and what they have found, I talked about 2%, but they have found 15.4% of subjects in the workforce in doing what do you call it, prevalence of being bitter. I don't know in India how many people will be bitter. I must ask Shimpa. Shimpa, have you seen anyone being bitter, Shimpa?
Oh yeah, it's not as uncommon as we would like to think.
I'm sure in your many years from Bombay to Kolhapur to Mauritius, you must have met someone bitter about something isn't it? Some of it may be. Some may be genuinely true, and there may be good reasons. Sometimes it might be more paranoid, but it doesn't matter. What the evidence shows, irrespective of the very concept of becoming bitter, it leads to this whole event of a trigger of ruminations that ultimately impair your function. And of course, if it impairs your productivity personally, it affects your organization and indeed your community and country. Okay, so these are some of the, when we talk about the presentation, I won't take this so much, but there's some differences to look at how embitterment, obsessive compulsion, and also post-traumatic stress and depression, where they are similar and where some things are different. And you'll see in embitterment, you see anger. Okay, you don't see it in depression, you don't see it in obsessive compulsion, but you don't see it also in the PTSD. But importantly, you'll see rumination, which is also seen in obsessive compulsive disorder, where they have also rumination. So this is some of the facts. Okay, now just very quickly, um, just for you to know, what can we do about this, right? So we talk about work to get the person first to acknowledge that there is a problem, including behavior, reduce some of the unhelpful behaviors, develop strategies to reduce rumination. How do we reduce this rumination? You know, different strategies are there. Distraction, so many. It's almost like the same as an obsessive thought. When someone gets obsessive compulsive disorder, they can't get away. Something like that. Okay, and the approaches: cognitive behavior therapy, mindfulness-based CBT, mentoring, problem-solving intervention, and of course, there is a therapy called dignity, human dignity, and this is Linden's work in Berlin and so forth. Increasing the task, increasing awareness of the condition, being as managers, leaders, seniors, we also have to be aware that this is happening. So if you didn't know about it, you wouldn't. So we reduce collusion with the rumination, balancing the need to not to be perceived as dismissive, but being aware but not colluding, engaging in open, responsive communication, prompt response to investigation, grievances. So we have a good area in HR, how they proceed with investigations, grievances, and so forth. Procedural justice, good attention being given to that, and importantly, training at all levels, but support to the managers and to the leaders, leadership teams, mentoring for managers, mediation, training, and providing access buddies when going for HR investigations and so forth. But just very briefly, the one therapy that seems to have been beneficial is what is called wisdom competency therapy, getting our wisdom. And it's a multi-dimensional construct, including reflection, cognition, and affective components. So what do we talk about wisdom? Wisdom has been defined as an expert knowledge system in the fundamental life pragmatics. In fact, if you put it more generally, it's the capacity to solve the unsolvable problems. So wisdom is a psychological capacity similar to assertiveness or even social competency that can help someone cope with our past life events, negative, difficult life events that cannot be undone, and to leave behind what cannot be changed. That's some of the basis for wisdom. So they've used this called wisdom competency, and again tried to bring this, and this seems from the controlled trials and so forth. It happened. It is shown to be useful. So, what are the dimensions of wisdom? You see, there are 11 areas: factual and procedural knowledge, long-term perspective, contextualism, value relativism, change of perspective, empathy, recognition and acceptance of one's own emotion, emotional serenity, distance from oneself, uncertainty, tolerance, and control over one's own levels of aspiration. Now, these are researched world areas where they've looked at this construct or the dimensions of wisdom. What's wisdom? How do we look at it? And so that has been taken into therapy, where the wisdom encourages the decision to leave behind what happened, give a new meaning and a sense of coherence, to those very negative life experience. And it helps the individual accept and master those negative or undesirable emotions. And in fact, it helps to stimulate looking forward and not back, not living. Because if you look at the embodiment, they cannot move forward because they are angry or they are disappointed, humiliated about what they feel is an unjust situation that they were put in. It stops the persistent reactivation of memories. We talked of having this issue of memories, reduces emotional strain, stimulates internal dialogue, and allows a better mastery of unwanted and not automatic negative thoughts. Okay, so has been this whole model has been derived from wisdom psychology and theories about the etiology and of post-traumatic embitterment and adjustment disorders and so forth, but it's deeply embedded in the cognitive behavior therapy and of course uh, the aspect of reattribution and reframing of interventions, teaching to stimulate, we need to teach that, and it's done both for an individual or in terms of group. Now, so in conclusion, this, I know they picked this, but I wanted to see how many of you are aware of this, but it is a big issue for many organizations because it is a contributor to presenteeism, which has become now an important aspect to all organizations trying to improve their productivity. So given the importance of this post-traumatic embitterment disorder or even the plain embitterment may have, especially after conflicts at work, moral distress, redundancy, dismissal, unemployment. Certainly, after the COVID, we are seeing people having experienced all these aspects. There must be an increased awareness to resilience enhancement in the workplace. And of course, these interventions come under the branch of organizational psychological medicine, and it's based, the intervention based on neurosciences, the cognitive behavioral sciences, and the on human capital, not human resource. It's a capital that brings the returns on investment. So from that perspective, this is an important area. And I have to add, in the last couple of studies have been shown that moral distress, people are facing, health workforce are facing moral distress and moral injury after the COVID experience in Italy, China. 3-4 studies have come, but they've also found bitterment. One of the psychological, besides the sleeplessness or the insomnia, anxiety, and so forth, in the workforce, the healthcare workforce, they found moral injury, moral distress, and bitterness or embitterment at what they've experienced in trying to deal and manage the COVID, the lack of resources that and the flooding of when one has to make these decisions. This is what has been reported, and in fact, that there are many, not many, but there's a few studies from Italy, China, and I think also from UK that have shown the workforce so having bitterment coming there. So thank you very much for this. I hope I've taken you to a very new area, but I'm sure all of you, when you think about it, have seen it, have experienced, maybe some of you have experienced it yourself, being bitter for for whatever deemed injustice that you've been put to. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much for this detailed explanation and this detailed introduction and the lecture on OPTED. We are so glad to have you. And people have asked a few questions in chat box, which will be answered tomorrow in the panel discussion session. So please tune in tomorrow. Please tune in for tomorrow's session as well. Moving on to our next speaker, we have Dr. Shimpa Sharma ma'am, Pro VC, DY Patil Education Society, Institution DP University, Kolhapur, IQ-based director for the at Kolhapur, India Bioethics Unit, UNESCO Haifa, General Medicine from Bombay, and has a teaching experience in India and abroad for almost more than 24 years, MBA in Healthcare and Hospital Management, and currently she is pursuing FIMAR Fellowship in Philadelphia, Boston. Ma'am, I request to please start with your session.
Thank you, Vedangi, for the kind introduction. Bear with me while I share screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Okay. Well, good evening to all the delegates. First of all, I must acknowledge Dr. Russell D'Souza's talk. I think, sir, you have not just made the facts very clear, you have made my task very easy. And I more or less expected this because I knew when you deal with a topic, you are extremely thorough and detailed, and no one can do a better job than covering the topic the way you have. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Now, Dr. Russell has already spoken about the origins of the post-traumatic embitterment syndrome. What we need to understand is that the Berlin Wall fell in 1990, and Michael Linden proposed this concept in 2003. So it was over a decade worth of observations. Why do I say a decade worth of observations is important? Because it tells you that, like a lot of chronic diseases, this disorder lingers and stays for a long duration of time. Somebody asked, how long after the traumatic problem will the disorder stay? Well, definitely 13 years. There's a lot of bias, or there was a lot of discussion about why isn't this disorder, after so many years, not in the DSM? Why is it not in the classification of mental health disorder? And there is a category of people, a group of people who believe that there was a strong bias in the entire concept that was created, in the sense that, well, everything was about Germany, the questionnaire was in German, the people interviewed were from Germany, the tragedy happened in Germany. So there was a feeling that there's something too much around Germany and it may not be relevant to other people. And I think perhaps that is one of the reasons it took a little longer kind of crossing borders and territories. Bah Ambag, oh yes. If anybody has not seen the movie Christmas Carol, please do see it. Because this movie is, I think it had Jim Carrey in it, so it would be an interesting movie to watch. But basically they have a character in that, Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge, and he's more or less believed to be the poster boy of PTED by a large group of experts. So maybe if you watch Christmas Carols, you will be in an extremely good position to understand what PTED could actually lead to. It's important to understand and actually realize that mental health disorders are always to be seen within the context of the society in which the person lives. Let me put it to you this way, that we talk about the legal system and we say it needs to be seen in the context of the society. So in USA, you can sue McDonald's for a hot cup of coffee and get away with millions. In India, if you sued McDonald's saying the cup of coffee was too hot, you'd probably be laughed out of court. So just as law is a social construct, it depends upon the society, the values, the morals, the beliefs. Similarly, mental health illnesses are also a social construct, and therefore it's important to understand we should not simply adopt guidelines without understanding them as how we are to apply them in our society. What I thought was, in the little time that I have, I'll quickly go over a short story, and maybe as we see how the story evolves, we'll understand better how PTED actually gets created. So Ramesh is a 14-year-old boy, finishing his 9th standard. Sorry? Yeah, he's finishing standard 9 and he's just entering standard 10. He's an all-rounder. He leads the school football team. He's an A+ student in studies. His parents love him. He's a good boy, well behaved. He's got a good group of friends and he's popular amongst his friends. So basically, life is hunky-dory. He doesn't have a problem. And he's now going to enter his 10th standard. The board exams are on. The school in which he studies has a rule. If you have to represent the school in sports in standard 10, it was important to get specific permission from your parents, because inter-school sports, you have to miss school classes, practice sessions. And therefore, every student who was in any of the teams was given a letter, asked to get it signed by the parent, and if they submitted that letter, they were on the team. Ramesh didn't think that would be a problem. He was a straight A student. He was the captain of the team. He had led them to state level victory the previous year. So his place was certain. And he went to his parents for the signature. And of course, what he didn't expect happened. They did not sign the letter. They explained to him that, 10th standard is a deciding year. How you do in high school often decides how you do in your future. So you must focus on your studies. And Ramesh was shocked and surprised. He argued, he fought, then he begged, he pleaded, and finally when he realized his parents wouldn't budge, he gave up. He couldn't understand. He understood that they had a reason, but he didn't see how that reason applied to him. But he had no choice. He resigned himself to following what his parents had decided and continued with his school. Remember, this small little episode, which to a lot of us would not seem very serious, is actually what could become the seeds of a PTED. So school continued. Ramesh would get up every day, he would catch the bus, he would go to school, he would study, give his homework in, do everything that a normal student does. His friends were there, some of them were playing football, some were not, and he still hung around with them. But now he hung around at a distance. He didn't find the enjoyment in their company anymore. He was always brooding by himself, so he hung around the periphery of the group. He was there in their activities, but not really there. And the year went on. Soon he found he wasn't feeling very hungry. He wasn't interested in food. Not that he was a foodie, but he wasn't feeling too hungry. He would sit with his books. He was a good boy. He knew he had to do well in 10th standard, but he couldn't concentrate. He would just turn the pages up and down, spend some time, write something. And the other problem he started realizing, or he started experiencing, he was always running on low battery. He was tired all the time. He didn't feel like doing anything. Guess what happens? He starts flunking a few tests here and there, or he doesn't get as good marks. His teacher did try and counsel him, spent a little time motivating him, supporting him. Teachers got worried. What happened to this A+ straight A student of ours? His mother tried to counsel him. She started getting anxious about her son and his future, but he was not in the mind frame to listen to them. His friends would chat with him, try to pep him up. They would talk to him about the good things that were happening with them. But unfortunately, when they shared their happiness at the football game and the victory and the trophy, though he was smiling from outside, his bitterness inside was increasing. He says, why wasn't I able to play the game? I'm as good as, if not better than any of them. And this was Ramesh's story. With time, he started getting resentful. He became bitter. But the problem was, whom was he supposed to be angry at? He couldn't be angry at his parents because they were doing things for his benefit. He couldn't be angry at the school because it was a regulation which they followed for every single student year after year. So the only person left to be angry at was himself. So though he thought his parents were unfair, he also was angry at himself that why am I not able to cope with this problem better? And this friends, is the story of a smiling boy who so fast, because of a single negative life event, a pretty normal event, you would say, became bitter, became angry, and started, not liking things. He had a very negative outlook on life. Now, this is the story of Ramesh. I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to take his story step by step, and let's try and correlate it with what Dr. Russell just spoke about. Let's try and see all the principles, the criteria, the descriptions that Dr. Russell gave. How do they apply to Ramesh? Okay, so let's start from the great one boy who he was, the bright, smiling, happy, lovable, popular, and successful boy. He fits the first core criteria, which says there should be no obvious mental disorder in the year before the critical event, right? So no pre-existing mental disorder. Now, to note, embitterment is not a symptom only of PTED. It is seen in a lot of other mental disorders. And therefore, if you have a PTED on top of a previous mental disorder, you'll never really know which is what, right? So to pure PTED, to be able to classify it, you say no pre-existing mental disorder, which Ramesh, of course, qualified for. Another core criteria is a single exceptional negative life event precipitates the onset of the illness. Single, it was a negative life event. Why do we say exceptional? Actually, I think it was a pretty normal event. How many of us have had parents not letting us go for a picnic, right? Or your friends are going to the beach in the next town and your parents said, no overnight. And we kind of grumble and scribble and then we accept it, right? So what is exceptional about this event? What is exceptional about this event is that it did not match what Ramesh was expecting. I'll come to that in a little further time. Another additional criteria out of the 11 criteria, that additional criteria that Dr. Russell showed, is that people see themselves as victims and as helpless to cope with the event or the cause. And that is what happened to Ramesh in the end. He got resigned. He said, there's nothing I can do. I'm unable to convince them. I can't play football. And like it or not, I'm stuck here, right? So this was like him being the victim and everybody being against him. The world was unfair. The whole situation was unfair. It was unjust to him. It was not what he expected. When we talk of post-traumatic embitterment disorder, these are the two keywords, right? What is the trauma and what do we mean by embitterment? The trauma, like I already said, is a single exceptional negative life event. But you know what we need to remember? These events are usually not life-threatening. In PTSD, a lot of the events that are described as the triggers are life-threatening events. Very often they give you physical harm. Here, physical harm is not usually the point. It's a life event, a normal life event, a negative life event, which has impacted you differently. What is the key, as Dr. Russell said, is the violation of basic beliefs. Was he angry at his parents? Not really. Was he angry at the school? No, really. So what was he angry at? He was angry at the fact that he had some basic beliefs that if I study hard, if I get my A pluses, my parents will let me play sports. That basic belief which he got, maybe from something his parents said, maybe the way they treated him over the years, that belief was violated. So the clash is never him and the event. It is his basic belief and its violation that causes the problem. So unjust, feeling that things are unfair, feeling insulted, humiliated, feeling that you've been, subjected to derogatory behavior is all a part of the trauma. Let's look at what embitterment could include. Dr. Russell already said, it is not just anger, it is anger with helplessness, with the feeling that there's nothing I can do about it. It's a negative feeling. They are very hostile. Have you ever called up somebody on the phone and before that person, before you have said hello, the person said, yes, what is it? Right? That person is hostile. Why is he hostile? He doesn't even know who's at the other end of the phone likely. That is embitterment. Resentment is a part of embitterment. Actually, just to give you an idea, embitterment comes in 3 parts. Okay, you have the feelings, which is hate, anger, rage, right? You have what they call the cognitive part. And the cognitive part is, what do I learn out of that negative experience? And what that embittered person learns out of negative experience is, you know what, I can't trust anybody. You know what, the world is against me. You know what, I need to be very suspicious of people and how they behave. So this is the cognitive part of embitterment. And the third part of embitterment is what we call action tendencies. Action tendencies is how do they behave differently, right? And major part of action tendencies, one would be social withdrawal. Not being a part of the gang, right? Not going to the party, not being the life of the party anymore. And in grown-ups, in certain official situations or organizational situations, it could also mean people who keep writing letters of complaint to the newspaper, to the government, to the authorities, to the commissioner, right? Keep going to court, keep fighting PILs, public litigations. That is action tendency of embitterment, okay? So I hope things are a little clearer as to what is trauma and what is embitterment in PTED. Now, a very important factor is the emotions of PTED do not show spontaneous remission. Okay, this is how you differentiate it from most other adjustment disorders. We all have felt upset and bitter and felt like people are being mean to me or unjust to me, and give it a couple of weeks or a month or 2 months, and we all become okay, come to terms with it, say, okay, forget it, right? Or we take our revenge and then move ahead. There is spontaneous remission. In embitterment, in PTED, spontaneous remission takes place, and if you do not recognize it, it could evolve or rather degenerate into something that is more pathological, more harmful, and more dangerous to the person and to society both. Now, this is something very relevant for today. Elevated rates of PTED are seen when you have major social changes. And the social change has to be such that it impacts my life and makes me change my plan, right? I have to reorganize my personal biography. What are major social changes? Marriage, divorce, okay, illness, financial loss, loss of job, maybe a lack of promotion, maybe a demotion at work, maybe an inquiry against you, maybe a refusal to play football, maybe not being allowed to go for the picnics your friends go to, correct? So all these social changes, when they happen at a large scale level, we obviously are going to see more PTED. That is why this topic becomes so relevant today. The last year has seen such a social change, a change in the way we work, live, behave, interact, communicate. I mean, you name it and everything has changed, right? And a lot of people have had to reorganize their lives. Their colleges didn't start or started and they missed it. They failed or they couldn't study. They had access to online or didn't have. They were going to go abroad, they couldn't go. So there are many factors that come when we talk about reorganizing your personal biography. Okay, let's continue with his story. In spite of all his problems, he kept going to school every day, stayed with his friends, but didn't stay with them very close. And that tells you emotional modulation was not impaired. Nobody really realized he was going through anything major. People with PTED, if their mind is not focused on that event and you have distracted them, let's say you discuss a movie with Ramesh, you probably find that he responds absolutely normally. He laughs at the right times, he discusses it, he enjoys the same scenes, and therefore there is a very normal affect which we don't see in depression, right? So when you want to say that the person is going into depression because he didn't get his permission, the affect must be there. The change in affect must be there, right? He must behave differently. Emotionally, his responses are different, okay? And this is an additional criteria of PTED. He had so many somatic complaints, right? Not feeling hungry, not interested in food, unable to concentrate, feeling tired all the time, probably had restless sleep. This is also an additional criteria. In addition, the drive is unwilling. Dr. Russell mentioned, it's not that the person cannot do the thing, it's just that he's unable to, it's like you have a car standing with the engine and the key, but he's unable to turn the key and get it going. So the drive is unwilling, and therefore he really never gets his work done. And what Dr. Russell was speaking about, presenteeism. Presenteeism is basically when you turn up for work, but you're not well. You're mentally not well, you're sick, you're physically not well, or you're upset, or you're angry, or you're a PTED, and therefore your productivity is basically a zip. Correct? Presenteeism is kind of a result of the unwilling drive. Okay? I have written it should be more than 6 months. The pure definition says 3 months, but there has been now the newer proposed criteria say perhaps it should be 3 to 6 months. There are people who say these symptoms should drag on for a year before you put a label onto the person. But I love these 4 words that I saw, and therefore I put them here. The symptoms must be excessive, definitely. Not being allowed to play football doesn't mean you change everything about your life, but he did. It should be pervasive. Pervasive means it should affect all areas of your life. It affected his studies, his sleep, his eating, his friends, his parents, his teachers, right? So it was a pervasive kind of situation, persisting 6 months, and debilitating. Debilitating means basically he lost something in the bargain. He became weaker and lesser. The F in history, I think, would be sufficiently debilitating for him. But yes, his social interactions, his progress in life, his self-belief, all of that have gone down. One of the core criteria is that patients recognize the link between what happened, that negative life event, and their current situation. So he knows, I resent my friend's football victory because I'm not able to play it. I wasn't allowed to play. I don't feel like studying. I don't think it matters. You know what? I studied and I still didn't get what I want. How is studying going to get me what I want in future? Remember the violation of the basic belief? So he does make the link between his current situation and the end of it. And of course, this core criteria, which is so important, that every time you remind the person of the event or something happens that reminds him of the event, he again replays the entire emotional cycle, the embitterment, the emotional arousal, right? And that's what used to happen when his friends used to share their good news. But it could have happened even if he saw 5 children playing football in the gully. So anything could remind him of that. It could even be a football match on television. This is again a core criteria, right? So Ramesh, if you see, it's fitting in so many criteria. Though we feel it's a simple thing, but he actually fits all the core criteria and almost 4 or 5 of the additional criteria. The range of feelings in this thing, just to share this little bit, also include irritability, right? Resignation. It's a kind of nihilism. Nihilism means basically when you say, you know what, I don't need to do anything because nothing makes a difference, right? So when nothing matters, why should I bother? That is really nihilism, but they do have a kind of resignation feeling. And of course, the obsessive desire for revenge and retribution, which even Dr. Russell has spoken about, yeah? Patients blame themselves for the event for not having either prevented it or not being able to cope with it. And that is what happened with Ramesh. He was angry at himself. Why am I not able to get out of this flunk I am in? Why am I going downhill? I know I should study, unable to study. So remember, when a PTED student or a PTED child does badly, or a PTED person is performing badly, it's almost pathological. He can't help it. It's not like he's not doing it deliberately, right? So we must understand that, and rather than blaming the child for not adjusting to the loss of football, we kind of have to work it differently.
Ma'am?
So, yes?
Ma'am, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but because of the time constraints...
I'm on my last 2 slides. I'm on my last 2 slides. Yeah?
Okay, so sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what can you as a person do with a friend who you think may be having a PTED? I think that is important. How do you handle a patient who may be having PTED? Engage with them, encourage them, more important, encourage them to talk and listen to them, because listening is soothing. There is this competition between coaching versus counseling. Coaching is more about letting the person figure out his way and figuring out what works for him. Counseling is guiding him to a way and telling him this will work for you, right? So here they need more coaching. Wisdom therapy is actually a kind of coaching. Performance improvement is a very bad target or a solution. So we tell a boy, you failed your history test. Let's give you a target. Just get 50%. And you're increasing his anxiety. His drive was unwilling. Remember, he can't concentrate. Now you've given him a target which will make him hate himself more for not succeeding. Suicidal ideation can happen if you feel somebody is excessively showing excessive resentment. Take professional help. But yes, it's important all of us recognize that PTED is a psychological condition and a disability. It's pathological and not just a bad adjustment on part of the person who's suffering. Paramhansa Yoganand said that, send out only thoughts of love and goodwill. And I think the third one we should send out is one of gratitude. He also said, never get angry, for anger poisons your system. And as Nietzsche said, the easiest way to consume oneself is with anger. I just hope this presentation has helped in improving your understanding of PTED. I'd like to thank the moderators for giving me the time to complete my talk. Thank you so much.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you in between. And also thank you so much for this very nice explanation about PTED and this disorder in the form of a case-based study. It was really helpful. Now I would like to ask our head bioethics students unit wing to please continue with the further proceedings.
So now we have come to an end for today's session. So before that, I would like to propose a vote of thanks. I would like to thank our Chancellor, Dr. Sanjay D. Patil, sir, D.Y. Patil Education Society, institution deemed to be University Mudgal, sir, Pro Vice Chancellor Shimpa Sharma ma'am, for always guiding us. I can say we also had Indian Steering Committee Bioethics Unit member, that is Dr. Russell D'Souza, sir, for accepting our invitation and delivering a wonderful talk. Dr. Mary Matthew ma'am, Dr. Derek sir, and I also saw that we had Dr. Praveen Arora sir along with us. Thank you so much, sir. A special thanks to Dean Dr. Rakesh Sharma sir for always helping us, motivating us, encouraging us to take up such events and activities for personal development, intra as well as extra personal development skills. I would also like to thank our steering committee, members of bioethics unit, student advisory committees, all our attendees. I know we have attendees attending the event from India as well as abroad. So thank you so much. There was huge time lag between other countries, but then still you managed to attend our session. So I really thank you for that. I would also like to thank all the faculties from Psychology University who are attending this session. Thank you so much once again for making this session a memorable event. I would also like to thank our digital library, that is Suraj sir, for helping us out with all technical glitch. A special thanks to Kolhapur India Bioethics Student Wing for actively taking part for this seminar and showing their keen interest on this topic, PTED. And once again, a special thank to the Secretary for Kolhapur India Bioethics Student Wing, that is Vedangi Patil, for carrying out this event so smoothly. I would now like to know if there is any feedback from Shimpa ma'am or Russell sir or maybe Dean sir.
I will take this opportunity to once again thank the esteemed speakers. I think Dr. Russell D'Souza has made things so interesting and made things really clear to most of us, and I'm sure we will now understand what exactly does this term mean and how to deal with this. And also to Dr. Shimpa for giving good example and trying to correlate that with what Dr. D'Souza sir had said. Overall, I must say it was very interesting and very learning experience for all of us. Shubham, I think you deserve a special clap and a thank along with Vedangi. You people are doing a great job and keeping the spirit high, and you are doing something which is the need of the time and which is very, very futuristic. I think this is a very, very important area that we are into bioethics, and you are doing a very good job. I congratulate you and thank you for your efforts. I'm sure in future too, you will be able to keep the standards very high. And my special thanks to Colonel D'Souza, sir. I think it's very, very nice to listen to you and that you remember that how we met 30 years back in
I know.
while we were in and wonderful, sir. And we are looking forward to meet you in person in very near future. Thank you very much, sir, for being around there.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you, Subham. Thank you, Dr. Sharma and Shimpa. It was very nice. You put it into explaining it with your case. Very nice.
Thank you, Dr. Yasser, and thank you for joining us today, sir. Always a pleasure.
I would like to mention that we are having again session on tomorrow that is going to be panel discussion. All the questions which are put up in the chat box will be taken care of tomorrow in panel discussion round. Again, we are having eminent speaker, that is Dr. Avinash D'Souza and Dr. Devrat Harshi will be discussing all doubts related to PTED tomorrow. So I would request each and everyone to please tune in tomorrow also for the session. The link for the session will be shared in the WhatsApp group. So I expect active participation from all the attendees. Thank you so much, each and everyone, for logging in today and making this event a grand success. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Phil Derek.
Well done. Thank you. Good to see you all, sir. Fantastic.
Thank you very much, sir.
Really enjoyed
Thanks,
it. Well
David.
done,
Thank you
Shubham.
so much. And thank you for being with us the entire evening. It's really nice of you.
Thank you, Dr. Shimpa. Congratulations to you.
Oh, Praveen, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks,
congratulations.
Dr. Praveen.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Well done with
Russell,
Angi.
sir.
That was a very good job. Keep it up.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Excellent
everybody.
work by the students.
Thank you, all the speakers' idea and everything was passed on so well. Thank you. And Dr. Anita Vinay, thank you, everybody. Sir, it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Dr. Anita.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll be now sharing the post-event form in the group. I request everyone to please fill the post-event form as well to avail the certificate. And a special thanks to Dr. Shimpa Sharma ma'am, Dr. Anita Vinay ma'am, and Russell sir for helping us out throughout the event. Without them, this event would not have been possible. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Welcome. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.